conversation we are going to have today is basically how do you build while not building in a bubble, not getting stuck in your own head, getting out of your own way, that type of thing. So I'm going to ask you some questions here. We'll maybe do like a couple of short questions from the audience just because we're running a little bit long here. But anyway, so we'll dive to that. So if you guys have any questions for Josh, we might take like maybe two or three at the end. So first off here, what would you say that it actually looks like when someone is building in a bubble and they might not even realize that they're like isolating themselves purposely or not purposely?
Well, I think that probably looks a lot like, well, one, not coming to an event like this would be a first start. So, or coming to an event like this and not asking for feedback. So maybe you're making statements about what you're doing, but you're not building community and letting people in to, you're not pitching, you're not getting feedback, you're not talking to customers or trying to find customers to try and invalidate what you think is true. So that can you just start talking to other people that sound a lot like your mom, which they're just all really supportive. And so that just keeps you happy, and maybe that's the endorphin you need, but you need to be going after the other thing, I think. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so much of that business journey is that iteration and the like, hey, like normally your first idea is not what you're actually going to end up bringing to market there. So has there been a time where you're like, oh my gosh, this idea is gold, and then you brought it to your potential customers or whoever, and they're like, what are you talking about? Like maybe fool's gold, but not real gold. Like, can you tell us a time when that happened for you?
Yeah, my first entrepreneurial venture besides pressure washing for a side gig was a company called College Piggy, which was basically college savings social network, so a way for people to kind of like think GoFundMe, but for college savings. So instead of giving a piece of crap gift to your kids or your grandkids or your nieces and nephews, you would give into a 529 account. 529 accounts are usually state approved or managed or oversought funds that are tax deferred or free if used towards college expenses. I started that right before the Great Recession. So my customers told me real quick, which were bank partnerships and some other financial advisory partnerships, that, hey, all our customers just lost half of their 401k. We don't have time for 529s. And I was like, cool. So that pivoted me into the next thing.
Yeah, no kidding. That is a aggressive pivot, I am sure. So what does like real listening look like? Like when you are trying to get like feedback from your customers, like is there anything that you would speak to that? And when you're like still in that idea phase or like trying to figure things out, like what does good listening look like?
Well, I think let me start with what I have done that has not been good listening.
And also another thing with that too is I was going to say what are maybe some good questions to cut through. So if you want to start at questions and then go to listening, we can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, so what does good listening look like is typically you're asking questions about their problem as opposed to trying to guide them into your solution. So dig deep into the problem and try and let the solution rise to the top naturally. I think the more, if you kind of think of it like a story, it's like an old story, new story. What is the old story? What is the thing that is driving them crazy? And honestly, most people have a ton of problems. They actually only have time or money for probably the top 3 or 4. They don't have capacity to solve all their problems, and most entrepreneurs are people that are building businesses and they're running quickly. They are assuming their middle management is solving problems 11 through 35, and if not, that'll come up later, but problems 1 through 4 are the things they can focus on. And so like you got to think about who the decision maker is, and is your thing a problem worth solving? It might be a problem, but is it worth solving, and is it worth paying for, and is it something that's going to be worthwhile? Will it cost too much to get the sale? Is also another thing. So you got to ask questions. Don't be sold on your solution out the gate. It's become married to their problem, and if it's big enough and your thing can solve it, then you might have something.
So have you found there to be any like really good questions that you say you've either come up or like stumbled upon that you're like, oh, like that one was able to help get to the core of what the problem was? I know that it's, there's lots of different businesses and things, but have there been any particular questions or statements that you have found really help get through the fog?
Yeah, probably not like just universal or I'm trying to think. It's so contextualized a lot of times. Well, one is you got to be like, come on, you have to be really you carry kind of this student mentality when you're around people. I love, if you could even ask someone that you think might be your potential customer for advice, you might really learn a lot. It's like if you stop selling them, or if they feel like you're not selling them, you might actually like disarm them. They might actually really tell you some really interesting, pieces about the industry or about what they're really dealing with that can open the doors. So what I really try and do is just, be a student around them, wanting to learn, wanting to understand without, being needy. Don't need something out of it. Get whatever you can get and let them be who they are. You don't need everything to be a sale in that moment. Think long term, build relationship, gather as much info. You'll know who's got bandwidth for a conversation in that moment. You don't know what they went through that day. You don't know the number of things going on in their personal life or in the business that might give them more space for you in that moment or not. But gather what you can. So I would say, it's more about your approach. What are you about? And if you are just seeking and gathering, then you're going to get that from so many different places. You'll get it online, you'll get it from AI, you'll get it from, people locally, you'll get it in a community like this. And when you're around other people, you're going to get it from them too. I mean, when I was at Venture Conference, I have my thing. I had great sidebar conversations with Sammy about my thing, and he brought up a whole new part of an industry that I can go after with our business. And it was because I'm just always in this posture of I want to learn, I want to hear, I'm a sponge, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to value it and go look into it. And so when you're like that, people want to help you out.
Totally. So what would you say happens when people start sharing their kind of like messy early stage ideas before they're ready? We hear that a lot of like, oh, well, I don't want to tell anybody about what I'm working on until it's perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. And what would you say to that?
You're really just afraid. It's not true. It's never going to be perfect, and you know it. Or you've convinced yourself that it's to me, it's always, whenever I've used that, it's because I'm afraid that I'll get rejected, or that I've spent too much time, I've got so much sunk cost in it, I need to double down, and then I get my reputation wrapped up in it. And so I got to keep going further into this lie that I tell myself until I believe it, and then I'm hoping no one else sees through it. It's just not true. Get out there early with your ideas, and your idea sucks. I mean, it just does. I'm right now in the process of proving a bad idea to become good, and I have actual $1 million in sales this year. It's not a good idea yet. It's just a local idea that's helping me pay some bills right now, but it's not a great idea yet. Like, I'm trying to build something. And so I got to keep trying to knock on the doors and talk to people like Sammy and talk to Kirk and talk to Eric and talk to other people, because I want to make it good. It's a sucky idea right now, because like other people can replicate it pretty easy. So it's just, it's that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what's the risk of staying stuck in your own head for too long and like just like continually down that, like, say maybe deep analysis and not having the action?
So say that again.
Yeah, so what's the risk of staying stuck in your own head for too long?
You're just gonna. All right. I love the old. So I've lived through 3 eras of startup. So.
As in startup ready.
Nope.
Startups. Okay.
So I'm old. So compared to some of you guys, how old are you? Yeah. 16? Awesome.
You just know how to iterate fast. That's all.
Really,
You're
no,
good.
that's great. No, 16. So I started in startup before you were born, and my daughter is almost she'll be 19, and so I started the year she was born. That was when College Piggy started, and that pivoted into Mindbox and Mindbox into other things. So there was some. So the era I got into startup was the social networking era. So we were always like trying to connect people. Then it was the app for everything era, and now it's the AI era. So you've had these iterations. I think that the risk of staying in your own head is just that you're not gonna pivot quick enough. You're not going to fail fast, fail cheap, which was the old, like, that when I got into startup, that was like the adage, that was the thing that you live by, is like, fail as quickly as possible. Fail as quickly as possible. Then it felt like there was a time period where people were afraid of using the word failure, which I'm glad Bryant Ellis has attacked head on, and some others is like, hey, that's the learning. It's actually like these little micro failures that turn into usually something that's interesting. And most entrepreneurs, what is the quote, Kirk? It's like, how many, it's like in your 40s when you're actually building something interesting. Yeah, the average age of a successful entrepreneur is 45. Which I was looking at the magazines when I was in my 20s, it was like, no, it's 28. Like, you got to be 25, 22. It's like, but no, like it's usually after several iterations of something, you finally, it's like, oh, I get it. I know how to build this thing. I've got the network. I have the seasoned experience now, and you go through it. So anyways, I just think that you're just wasting time and iterating and learning and failing quickly and failing as cheap as possible.
So can you tell us like maybe a story of when you had to have that like face the mirror of like, you need to get out of your own way? Or have you just been pretty good at like, action, let's see what happens?
No. I've definitely had my share of suck. So I would say how to get out of my own way actually came more in my real estate and development experience, just learning how to so all of you are, if you're an entrepreneur, there's something that you're doing you feel like is just so valuable that no one could live without. You're an artist. You're a dreamer. You just feel like you've got it nailed on the head. This is what you have to do. You can't live without. It's the non-negotiable. And I think that the non-negotiables just get in our way. What should be the non-negotiable is that I'm not going to build a business a customer won't pay for. That should be the non-negotiable. But if you're building something that customers won't pay for, then you're just doing art for yourself and for free. And great, if that's what you want to spend, it's a non-profit. So it's, and that's good for some, but that's not a business. And so in my real estate stuff, I started learning in development, hey, if I can get 80% of what I want, that's success. If I can get 70% of what I want, that's success. Now I'm actually rolling back. If I can get 50% of what I want, you might say, no, Josh, you're compromising. You can't put on the chopping block the things that you cared about. But then I started asking myself, why do I care about those things? Bye-bye, phone. Why do I care about those things? What really mattered about that? Was that just ego for ego's sake, or did those things really matter to the end outcome of the customer or the experience? Or you say, yeah, no, the customer experience would be so much greater if it had this UI UX little gadgetry, or if it had this little component, whatever. And we look at Elon Musk and we're like, okay, we all have to be Elon Musks, and it's like, well, that's not really a great example of how every business can be built. First of all, Elon Musk built exactly what he needed to build for the government subsidies that he needed at the time. I think, and it was very strategic, and it was very good timing. He's a smart guy in how he went about funding that business, which then fueled the innovation he wanted to fund and gave him, it's like all the things. You look at the history. So I just think I needed to give up some of that romantic side. The romantic thing that got me into entrepreneurship hurts me when I'm trying to build customers. And then eventually, as cash grows, you can start to bring that back in a little bit, but then you got to tame it. again. So if you build something, so I'm concerned about that with my thing now. Is I'm like, okay, I'm building customers. Like I got to tame the romantic Josh again, and like go make money, and then like let that come out. Like it's just like learning when to let that out, the artist out, and when to put the business first. And business has got to be the forefront, or you don't have one. So that's.
Yeah. And I mean, kind of what you said might even answer this. So if you want to elaborate, or you're like, oh, I said what I said, then great. But this will be probably my last question here. Then we'll turn it over to the audience. But what would you say to someone who's been sitting on an idea for a long time and they're just like waiting for the right time to happen? You've kind of woven that answer a little bit through this already, but anything you'd like to add?
Well, it goes back to fear. There's probably fear there why you're not doing it. There's probably imposter syndrome. There's probably whatever. You could go get therapy for it. It's probably good. Probably, your first therapy might be just get your friends involved, and they're probably telling you what you need to hear, and family members and things like that. But so front porch therapy is really helpful, and then actual therapy might be helpful. But then from there, I think there is probably a truth that, if you've waited this long, someone else has already done it. We saw even at Venture Conference, there are a few of the ideas that even won, like, what do you call it, Audience Choice Award, and there were like 20 others that already had captured a majority of the market share, and they were talking as if no one else existed. And so...
That's not Yolando, just to say.
No, I don't know. No.
That was the other audience choice.
I want salt stuffies all day. What is the company name again? Snuggle Stuffies. I love it. But salt stuffies. Maybe there's a thing in there. All right. No, there was someone, and there was one of the other attendees that was doing some AI research on the industry while the pitch was going on, and nothing was brought up about competitors. It was hugely captured already, and it was going to be a huge buy-in to be able to capture that market and to be better than those other companies. It was like, wow, they probably waited a bit. Are they okay? They'll probably be okay. They're just going to be in the small 1 percentile of market share, and you're always going to have those kind of companies, but it's nothing like super interesting. So anyway, you probably just waited too long, and I think a lot of that's just based in fear. Don't wait too long. I also, if you kind of think about it there's some people that say it's like, if you think like in a spiritual context, you're like, maybe, you weren't the first person or the last person that's going to have that idea, and somebody's going to bring it forward if it's meant to solve someone's problem. So, usually when we see a good idea out in the marketplace, thousands of other people had the idea, and one person actually did something about it.
So, do you guys have any questions for Josh?
Thank you. Kind of goes to what you were just talking about, like waiting for the right time. What if the right time involved market conditions, availability of property? What would you say to those who've been kind of searching for, the right moment, or like, the stars haven't quite aligned yet, but they're out there trying?
Yeah, I mean, Marty McFly, he was hovering on the hoverboard. So if you're like waiting for 2015 to happen, which wasn't that Marty McFly's time when 2015 was when the hoverboard was going to be invented? So you got to wait for market conditions. I would just say, why not sell, really great skateboards until then? Figure out, get in the industry, be ready so that when the market conditions change, get in the middle of it somehow, so you're ready for the market conditions. Like, don't wait. Like, otherwise you're just behind the 8 ball, because someone who's already there and has the door open and been to all the conferences and knows Jeff by name and knows Cynthia by name and all these kinds of things, when the market conditions change, guess who's going to all of a sudden hire a director of innovation, and they're going to create that product and sell to Cynthia and Jeff? Someone who's already selling to them. So like, if you want to be in that industry, get in the space, get in the mix. I don't know.
So thank you, Joshua, for sharing. So after you crapped on nonprofits, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I knew that might come up.
I'm kidding. My question though is, how do you go about nonprofits when there's a lot doing the same thing? For instance, it's wildlife conservation. There's tons of them out there. How would you say I should go about that? Or do you say get out?
So what's your niche? What are you going to do in wildlife conservation that no one else is doing?
So I would say each one that I've known in California anyway are species specific. I would be wildlife altogether. So I would help birds, mammals, everything.
And what's the funding source?
It would be fundraising, memberships, and grants if I could get them.
Okay, who wants to give to it?
I would say conservationists, sportsmen, outdoors people.
Okay. So what's the nonprofit that you look to that you're most inspired by, that you like their model, their structure, and how they fund their organization?
I worked with one in Las Vegas, and that's the first organization I was with that did the all species, so they're everything. They're pretty small, so I don't know their funding source, but they just go off fundraising.
Okay. So we didn't talk about this, but I'm going to use your example to talk about one of the things I do when I'm kind of thinking about this stuff is try and kill your idea. So why has it not succeeded before? Why hasn't someone thought of this before? Why does it not already exist? Like, you got to just make sure you don't believe that you're the only person that's ever thought of this, or that you're the smartest person in the world. Like, got to always remember, like, there are people that have been thinking about the environment and all species since, beginning of time. There are people that love animals. So it's like, well, what's going on? What is the need? And why is that not already being done? So try and go kill your idea. Why is that small company organization not a big organization? It could be operational. It could be a lot of reasons. But I think of Trout Unlimited. Like, they're kind of an interesting nonprofit, and how they connect with fishermen and what they do for preservation of waterways, and they're pretty large. But yeah, man, I would just try and find a model. Is it big enough? Is it a big enough problem? Can you get it off the ground? Can you launch with, funding? Do you have to build, 100,000 memberships before you can really do anything that moves the needle? Like, are you ready for that kind of grind? Or is there a way for you to be launched out of another organization? So start within an organization and kind of with a game plan to maybe spin off, or to do, I don't know. Like, starting from scratch and to start going after grants, everything's really tough because they usually want you to have some history and, like, you're doing this work already. So then, it's a grind, and you have to ask yourself if it's worth it for you. I mean, that's very cause-based, right? So it's very different. It can be entrepreneurial. There are nonprofits here in town that I admire, what they're doing. CLC, Good News Rescue Mission, people like that. They're going after growth and trying to solve big problems here locally. So there are ways to do it, but it's a total grind. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Switcheroo.
I'm a new startup, and I've been doing this for a few months, and I find that I am distracted by the inspirational content out there. How do you keep focused when there's so many great ideas that go, oh, that's how I should build my business, or that's how I should advertise, or that's how I should approach, this or that problem?
You're going to have to, within yourself, just know when you need to shut it off and focus on your industry that you're trying to build on. Just stop with the scrolling. Gary Z, or V, whatever it is, needs to be Z. No, but I mean, you can only hear so much of that. It's just like, it's great. The hoorah is awesome. The content. It's just, at a certain point, you got to shut it off and just go build, and focus on input of, like, your industry and what's actually happening in that space, and what's happening with your customers, and researching that and kind of shifting. That's the only thing I would say. It's just, it consumes a lot of our time, right? And there's so much content out there, so you just have to build that, discipline.
just wanted to tack on to that. And I think this goes back to what you said about fear. If you go deep down, it's fear that there's a silver bullet that you don't know. There's no silver bullet. You can watch all the inspirational content you can find. Ultimately, no one has the secret formula for what you're doing.
They're all brass bullets, I guess, or whatever the heck bullets are made of. Last one here.
Okay. Is there anything that you felt like you jumped out too soon, like right before the dip? Maybe if you would have just hung in there just a little bit longer, it would have taken off?
That's a great question. I mean, I would just be guessing. No, I don't think so. I don't think that was, the ideas that I was trying to tackle or what I was working on. I only have like one business regret, and it was selling a house too soon. I lost like $300,000 if I'd still own it, but that's fine. That's cool. We've all done. I mean, some of us have done that. So, other than that, I'm glad. I wish I would have pivoted. No, here's actually how I would answer that question. I have 3 businesses I wish I would have gotten out sooner. I stayed too long because I was afraid of what it meant to my reputation if I dipped or if I it was like, oh, it's failure, and just embracing the transition and doing it sooner. That's what I wish I'd have done.
Well, Joshua, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us and imparting wisdom.